Each year, about 300 million tons of plastic are produced globally, and of that amount, only 9% is recycled. So this plastic, it will end up in the environment, it'll end up in the ocean, and it'll end up in our soil. About 7 million tons will actually end up in the ocean. So we have become what is being deemed as a throwaway society that is based on waste and disregard for the waste that we create. And one prominent object that we throw away is plastic. Now that plastic produced, about half of it is single-use plastic. So this is plastic that you only use once and then you throw it away. So when I first began planning for this speech, I was only going to do it on the impact of plastic straws and how we can reduce that. But after I conducted research and I read article after article, they had all these horrifying statistics about how big this problem actually is. And I realized that we as a society are capable of much more than just reducing our use of plastic straws. We can each make individual small changes that will add up and they'll drive change and ultimately turn our future around. So the amount of plastic that we use can be reduced with laws that work towards reduction and ultimately maybe stop produce of single-use plastic. We can use taxes or we can use policies. And without reduction, our soils, oceans, and ultimately humans are in danger of facing repercussions that can be seen in our health or in other aspects of our lives. So it's important to be aware of how big this problem actually is. So the plastics that contaminate oceans and soils which are giant parts of our ecosystem, and it's ultimately going to have an effect on organisms and humans. So according to a fact sheet published by Earth Day Network in 2018, humans buy about 1 million plastic bottles per minute, 4 trillion plastic bags per year, 500,000 straws per day, and 500 billion disposable cups per year. So there's a disconnect between people and the waste that we create. So we fail to see the damage that we are doing when we use all of these items every single day. And I think that, for example, our straws. As explained by the article Why This Matters for a Strawless Ocean published in 2018, most plastic straws are too light to make it through the mechanical recycling sorter, so they contaminate recycling loads and they're disposed of as garbage. And these straws aren't recycled and they end up in our ocean where they decompose into microplastics and they can be ingested by marine animals, and a lot of times people can find traces of plastic in our sea salt, in our tap water, and in the shellfish that we consume. So this problem is a little thing of straws, and yet we see it in big parts of our lives. Likewise, we don't see what happens when you put your plastic into a bin and when it's recycled. As stated by Rich Rill's article, this is how much plastic is in the ocean. And as I mentioned before, only about 9% of the plastic that is used is eventually recycled. So this idea that recycling is the solution to using all of our plastic is not only inaccurate, but it's harmful to the push to reduce the amount of plastic that we use. It's not enough to recycle when the amount that we are consuming is so vast. We must enact change through our own personal consumption habits and push for policies that will reduce and ultimately stop production of single-use plastics. So there's many ways to work towards solving this issue. Single-use plastics have a lasting impact, and if you expose yourself to little inconveniences, you can make a huge impact. So Fisher and Douglas explain in their 2018 article, The Impact of Single-Use Plastic in Our Lives, that nothing we use for a few minutes should pollute our environment for decades or even centuries. So here are a couple of things that we use, and as you can see, they take months, years to maybe never to decompose. And so as they mentioned, it's only something that we use for a little bit of time, and yet it's in our environment for a really long time. And so single-use plastics, they're convenient and they're cheap and they're an integral part of our lives. But they're also very detrimental. So if we recognize just how detrimental it is, we have the ability to change their role and how that we consume. And we can solve this issue by changing our mindset and recognizing how big this issue is. Avery Grom even states in her 2018 article that marine plastic pollution can be compared in significance as a problem to climate change. And so if we recognize the immensity, we can make small changes to our daily lives that will ultimately make a great impact. So small changes such as using only reusable water bottles or not using plastic straws at all. And even if you want to take it a step further, you can carry portable silverware in your backpack. That way you don't have to use a fork that you use once and then throw away. Or when you order takeout, you can not use plastic utensils and just take it back to your dorm or to your house and use your own silverware there. If you recall the 1 million water bottles per day that I mentioned earlier, an American averages about 13 water bottles per month. So if you just were really adamant about using a reusable plastic bottle, then you could save about 156 bottles per year. So we can enact policies that will give people the incentive to change. For example, grocery stores that give you discounts when you bring your own bags. Or Starbucks, if you bring your own cup, they also give you a discount. So we can give compensation to the restaurants and businesses that are doing this in order to get more people to start doing it. They can give benefits to consumers that bring the reusable silverware or they don't take plastic utensils when they use takeout. And additionally, we can tax the use of single-use plastics, which will make businesses and restaurants want to reduce it on their own and ultimately start saving money. So if we change our ways, we can have a great impact for the future society of humans and ecosystems. But without change, we're in grave danger, and even at this point, it's unknown just how bad plastic pollution is. As Bonanno explains in the 2018 article, 10 Inconvenient Questions About Plastic in the Sea, that science is still far from knowing the real magnitude of the impact of plastic because it's something that is relatively new and we can't see the long term. We don't know how it affects trophic levels of marine animals in the ocean and how it leads back to us as we consume those animals, as we use that water for various aspects of our lives. And although there's a lot of damage in the ocean, it doesn't just stop there. An article called Current Research Together, Trends on Plastic Pollution by Che from 2018 explains how plastic pollution can find its way to our soil and ultimately our organisms, and it has potential impacts on agriculture and our food system. So humans will soon face direct consequences in our daily lives, as explained by the 2017 article, Microplastics in Freshwater and Terrestrial Environments, that it is highly likely that microplastics will accumulate in continental environments, especially those with heavy human influence, such as agriculture and urban areas. So what can we do? Well, we can recognize how big this problem is, and we can expose ourselves to small inconveniences that will ultimately cause change. And we can push for policies and taxes that will reduce the production of plastic and develop a society that's not dependent on single-use plastics. And I think that if we're capable of creating a problem that's this big, then we're capable and responsible of remedying it and reversing its negative effects. Thank you.